Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching The Big Picture with me, Frank Rausen Pereira. As the US plans major changes in H-1B visas, India on Thursday said it was closely engaged with the Trump administration as well as the US Congress on the matter. On this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyze the proposed changes in the H-1B visas and their implications. Joining me on the program today are Prabhu Dayal, former ambassador, KP Nair, strategic analyst, and Professor Sreeram Chaulia, Dean, Jindal School of International Affairs. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. Let me go across to Professor Sreeram Chaulia. Now, Professor, who stands to lose out the most, if at all, these changes come into being?
Frank, whenever Trump or any protectionist talks about restricting trade or migration, be it H-1B or other forms of goods and services, the biggest loser will obviously be the US economy. And that has been our argument. In fact, that is borne out by scientific studies and research as well into the H-1B program. Neutral studies show that H-1B has actually been a net positive for the US economy and even for US jobs, for American workers. Because, the wage differential, and the outsourcing model on the basis of which H-1B is beneficial to American companies means that they generate higher profits and they can also do additional hiring of American workers. So overall, if you see the productivity of US industry and of the US manufacturing, of US services, all of these depend on outsourcing. So what Trump is trying to do, this whole anti-globalization push, is to try and force companies to relocate and to end outsourcing and for more Americans to be hired at a higher wage level. It actually negates the very concept of comparative advantage, which is the basis for trade. So I don't think American employers are going to buy it. By the way, it's not only Tech Mahindra, TCS, Wipro and Infosys that benefit from H-1B. We must remember that even IBM and Intel also use H-1B, although to a lesser extent. And Silicon Valley has been protesting what Trump has been doing from the day he has been inaugurated. All the big tech giants in the United States are concerned that these measures, if fully implemented, will lead to actually a lowering of the competitiveness of the US tech industry itself. And of course, remember one thing which has not been mentioned by my colleagues is that India does export a significant amount of software services to the United States. About 57% of our entire tech exports, software exports, go to one market, which is the US. It used to be around 80%, but 57% we have diversified somewhat, but still the dependence is high. So TCS, Tech Mahindra, Wipro and Infosys, the big four, these types of companies do also enhance their export capability and the human resource pool, the talent pool they have through the H-1B, because the workers who go to the US, acquire the contacts, work with American clients, then come back home to India, they are more capable, and that in turn makes our industry more competitive. So there has been a lot of talk that we should diversify our software exports. We should look at Asia Pacific, Latin America, Japan, Africa. I think that is already underway, and I'm afraid that if Trump lives up to his populist potential and does take drastic action, we will have to increase our diversification strategy, because that's one way. But overall, to answer your question, I think there will be losers on both sides. Okay. And especially in the US, because in trade of services or goods, Frank, the theory says, and it is correct, that the losers are concentrated and few. The gainers are diffused but many. Right. And the few losers are the ones that Trump is highlighting in order to gain political mileage, to create this xenophobic, anti-foreigner sentiment and to claim that, buy American, hire American. But in the long run, it is going to hamper American interests and American economy. Same goes with tariffs, same goes with curbs on immigration or on H-1B. So I think there will be enough of a resistance within the US corporate sector to what Trump is doing. And the kind of businessman that Trump is, he does talk quite fierily, but at the end of the day, if American profits are at stake and if the US economy slows down as a result of these kind of measures, I think he will backtrack. I feel that it is a lot of posturing before the congressional elections to shore up his white working class base, to show that, look, I'm fighting for American jobs, but this is a far more complicated matter, not as simplistic as the populists in the US say.
Professor, is the H-1B issue a sticking point between India-US ties?
It could become so, Frank, over time, because overall, lakhs of our Indian IT professionals have moved back and forth in the past decades through this program. So if it is drastically hampered, then obviously it will hurt, as I said, the trade in services between the two countries. And as far as relations go, I think the anti-immigrant focus of the Trump administration is actually more on the Latinos, the Hispanics coming via Mexico from Central America. They are basically trying to shut down the southern border of the United States against any foreign low-skilled workers coming in. So given that Indian IT professionals belong to medium to high skilled category, and H-1B is supposed to be for higher skilled workers, I think the economic rationale is very strong for it to be retained. Although I must say one factor which Mr. Nair didn't mention is that over the last couple of years, the degree of scrutiny for each application, the rejection rate for applications by companies that are seeking H-1B quotas has actually hit a record level. So it's not that they are simply, rhetorically brandishing a sword. The enforcement actions have been taking place and have been restricting already a large number of firms that apply, and then they are asked to provide additional proof. And now the specialty requirement means that there more, justification will be required for bringing in overseas workers by outsourcing firms. So I think in a way the effect has already started, and this is part of the overall problem with the Trump administration, which is based on pacifying emotional anxieties of the white working class in America. I mean, you look at the losses being caused by H-1B, alleged losses. I mean, you have a few hundred disgruntled Americans who were fired from a few companies and who filed suit saying that, look, the Indians are coming and taking over, and look at, for example, Disney as a company. Now, on the other hand, if you look at the overall benefits that I've been mentioning, that the US economy, not just Disney as a company, gets from the H-1B, it's enormous.
Right.
So, as a saying goes, in outsourcing, what goes around comes around. So, this is like a virtuous circle where capital and skilled people are being circulated. It benefits everyone. But so, I think that logic should prevail in the long run. But definitely, Trump is different. Trump is far more radical. Trump is far more far right than any American president ever. He's far more anti-free trade and anti-globalization than any president ever. So for those reasons, I think that the danger is much greater now, and I had foreseen this at the time when Trump was elected itself, that economic relations are going to be far bumpier because he is a core protectionist, Frank.
All right.
And a protectionist president who is willing to play to the galleries is a danger signal, and we should not take it lightly.
Okay. Professor, close the show for us with your concluding remark, and I'm going to ask you to be brief, please.
Sure. Interdependence and bilateral cooperation are the basis for India-US relationship to go forward. Any threat to interdependence and any sense that we could decouple the two economies and that the USA will grow on its own and doesn't need India or Indian skilled professionals is a misnomer, and we have to continuously challenge it, not only in terms of diplomacy and lobbying behind the scenes, but also intellectually and in the public domain. We should put out a large-scale campaign to show the benefits of H-1B for the US workers and for the US economy, and continue the convincing all the way until the end of Trump's first term.